Thanks for inviting me, and I'm going to, between now and the pizza, talk about something that is very dear to my heart, which is both growing engineers and growing teams. This is a joint talk with Mayan. Mayan is an engineering manager in our life sciences team. She's in a business trip, she couldn't join. My name is Gil. I run the engineering team in Flatiron Health. And who am I? So I used to optimize and scale computations and backends. This is kind of a finite element model of something. I spent several years in Microsoft working on the backend side in big maps. I don't know if it's called like that today. And spent 2 years in Facebook working on data pipelines for reputation of URLs and for objects to secure the sites. I joined Flatiron as a second engineer, but as you can see from this picture now, we kind of exploded, and now I mainly optimize and scale people. So it's going to be a good background for the discussion, or for the lecture, so I'll give you some slides about Flatiron. So our mission is to serve cancer patients and our customers by dramatically improving treatment and accelerating research. I hope you know some more of that, about that in a few minutes. We are 3.5 years old. We raised $330 million. We are now 250 employees. And the notable thing is that we have about 14 oncologists and nurses, practice administrators, clinical oncology pharmacists, and the tech team. So it's a very diverse team, and it really affects our culture and how we want to optimize it. We have 1 out of 5 cancer patients in the US that gets treatment is being treated by a physician that is using our system. So we have 1 million active cancer patients being served by our systems every month. So what do we do? First and foremost, we have an EHR. This is the system that powers all the screens in the clinic, from ordering the labs and the drugs and administrating the drugs, to scheduling, sometimes billing, not always. And we actually are optimizing the way that physicians are spending their time and making sure that they spend most of the time with the patients and not with the computer. We have a patient portal that allows the patients to understand what they're doing. And the nice thing about this is that we take all of those disparate data sources and disparate clinics all over the nation, and we pipe them into what is the largest real-world oncology data source. And now we can ask all kinds of questions and serve another constituents, which is pharma companies or life sciences companies. Now you have all of this kind of data. You can ask deep questions about very specific populations, and this is what we do. So we help drug companies understand how the drugs are being used in practice. Am I prescribing my drug to, in which line of therapy? Is this the first drug that people take or the second one? Is it being prescribed off record and off label and things like that? And we use those insights coming from everyone, both to help life sciences and to help the physicians back. And the even more interesting thing is that now that we have all of this data, we can also do prospective things. For example, match life sciences companies with the right patient. I have a trial, this fits like, I don't know, 5 patients out of 1 million. We will find these 5 patients and help this patient to get a cure. So what I'm focusing on today? High growth startups, engineering culture, and career ladders, and our lessons from that, and how it's all kind of like fits together. So I took it from like someone tweeted it a while. So just replace tech entrepreneur with a high growth startup. Friends think you're Zuckerberg, your mother thinks that you're solving, world's issues. Society thinks that you're just counting the money. Investors think that you're going to take over the world. You think that you're doing something very, very scientific, but it's actually very, very hard, right? So how many people here are working in high growth startups or want to work in those? Right? I think that you can empathize with that. So engineering in high growth startups, and I'm talking with my experience from Flatiron, is there are a lot of opportunities for individuals to step up, right? You're growing, you have more projects, you're hiring a lot. There's a lot of opportunities to decide how engineers do things, opportunities to decide what we value in engineering as a team, opportunities to decide what we value about an engineer's contribution. Now, realistically, when you grow quickly, the opportunities to decide is lack of clarity about. Right? So there's a lack of clarity about all of those things when you're growing, and I'm going to demonstrate this a bit. So this is a real graph of the number of people that we hired in the last 3.5 years. I think that this is about a year here. So in the first year, we would fit into Volkswagen Beetle. So, if you fit into Volkswagen Beetle, you can discuss this with your friend. You all have the shared context. And when we were going slowly, it's really not a big deal. Like, you have this clarity. But sometimes, at some point, you can see that it's like if this is almost 2 years, at some point in much less than a year, we doubled ourselves. And when you're in this point, you have more than half the people, or at least half the people that weren't in the company for more than half a year or a year. And then you start thinking about all of those things that I mentioned before. How we do things. We are not everyone on the same page. A couple of more anecdotes that I found funny. So this is September 2014, and we hired 5 people. It was amazing, and we onboarded them, and we have an onboarding program, and everyone was, contributing, joining their teams. And then 6 months later, when those 5 people were in the wild, we kind of like, oh shit, we don't really know what's our coding style. We need to document this. So this is where we wrote our kind of like our very first coding style and kind of like our very first developer etiquette documentation. And when I say wrote something, it's basically documented this, debated about this, iterated, and got to something that everyone felt that is, annoying enough but not too much to keep. The Flatiron story is actually much more complicated than what I described. So because around May 2014, we actually acquired another company. So this is actually the real number of engineers, and how to merge engineering cultures and to handle an acquisition and functional merging of teams is a topic for a whole new lecture. And I hope that they do a good enough job that you invite me to give that lecture at some point once I figure this out. No, I think that we are actually in a good place there. So engineering culture, it's not the kegerator, it's not the going camping or singing around the fire, and it's not some guru that arranges the cult around them, because look at me, do I look like a guru? And it's how engineers do things, how we make things, how we operate things, how we function as a team, or in short, how we engineer. And you'll see the theme coming up often here. So there is this amazing resource called the First Round Review, and I'm standing in the FirstMark office and saying that. But they have this kind of like repeated articles about building teams and building technology. And one of them was how I structured engineering teams at LinkedIn and add more for success. It's by Kevin Scott, the SVP of Engineering and Operations. And this entire paper is about why do you need to formalize your culture. So again, what does it mean to formalize your culture? It means that you want to document this, debate, and iterate. And he gives the most amazing checklist that I'm using this as my own cheat sheet for culture. How we make things, how we operate things, and how we function as a team. And you can see here like coding standard, code review, how we deploy code, how we branch, how we do source control tests. How we operate is how we monitor and alert and do the on-call and production. And how we function as a team is about the cultural values, collaboration, how we hire, how we promote, how we fire. Just Google this, you'll get the lecture, no need to take pictures. Tying back to kind of like Flatiron, so 2.5 years in, 30 software engineers, and how long can you sell the same story about we're going to change the world, there is a business path technology, people are starting to think about their career, right? And they need to define what a promotion here. People are working for the company for 2.5 years. Hey, I want to see that I'm actually growing, again, beyond the company. And we said, okay, let's build a career ladder and start talking about all of those things. And I'm going to talk about career ladders, what they are, and how they actually relate to the picture of formalizing the engineering culture. Because I think that we took this opportunity to do much more than just taking care of the promotion problem or challenge. So a career ladder is an articulation of a career path, right? It's a career path that is divided to levels. You have level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a specification of a set of desired engineering behaviors we expect at each level, which is basically, our engineering. This is how we engineer documentation. So there is a lot of overlap here. The same behaviors, swim lanes are present at each level, with progression by levels. You'll see examples, it will make sense. And obviously, managers are not really engineers, it's a different way to measure them. Product managers are not software engineers, so there are ladders for different disciplines. So it looks something like that. And before actually describing our ladder and what we do this, first of all, we haven't invented this, right? Most of you guys that worked in a big company or established one actually seen this. Our ladder is inspired by ideas from Google, Facebook, Box, Yammer, Bain & Company, which is actually a management consulting company. But we customize the context to our engineering challenges. None of these actually published their ladder in public, except Rent the Runway. So Camille Fournier, the CDO, shared this in a blog post, and this was our V-1 of a ladder. We started from there. Rent the Runway's ladder is based on Foursquare's ladder, and some Google friends kind of like whispered that the Foursquare ladder is based on the Google ladder. And I'm kind of betting that the Facebook one is also based on Google. But anyway, this is the way that our community evolves. And so this sounds so formal, like why do we actually need to, like, why can't I just give this raise to the guy, right? So career ladder is actually a definition of career goals. It's a personal guide. Managers and employees can actually have a through discussion. So if you work in a company and you have a career ladder and you haven't looked at this, do it. It's also a clear expectation setting. It's easy to say to someone, here are the X things you need to do before I see you grow. You can hold someone accountable if you are clear about what you're asking them. If you're not clear about what is your next level, you cannot hold someone accountable, and when you say no to them, they will feel crappy, and you feel crappy because you actually haven't defined the right goal for them. If you use ladders for performance, it's actually even better because now there is a performance standard. Compensation is a very touchy subject, right? On one hand, if you knew that you can just go and demand raise, you would do this for your wife, you do this for your parents, you do this for someone, you will feel obligated to go and ask for a raise, right? But if you know that there is a formula, I need to actually grow as an engineer, I need to grow in the ladder, and then I'll get my raise, this pressure is off of you. And of course, as a manager, when there is a formula and there is no too much place for subjectivity, it makes those discussions easier for you. And obviously, if you do titles and you stick into the ladder, it's much easier. The same thing, the title is currency like a compensation. It should be tied to what you're actually doing and your impact, not to how well you negotiate. So, Flatiron engineering, I see individual contributor career ladder. So this is what we split the engineering behaviors to three. There is technical skill, which is technical skill, knowledge, and expertise. GSD, which stands for Get Shit Done. It's the impact, reliability, and execution. And C, which is contribution to our engineering Flatiron culture. And you can already see a couple of things here. So first of all, this covers a lot of stuff from how we engineer, and I'll harp on this soon. And there is interesting kind of like thing that we observed is that the technical skill is kind of a leading indicator. You know what you're doing. Getting shit done is you actually applied your skills. So most people are kind of like moving quickly here and then catching up with the GSD, which is interesting. So I'll give you a couple of examples to tie everything together. So technical skills, coding and testing, architecture and design, production and deployment. This is how we split it out. And the manifesto item, the cultural documentation item that is covered is source control and tech and testing and code review, how we operate things, on-call, deployment, access to production, how we function as a team, how we collaborate, or how we keep a high bus factor, how we make sure that every system has multiple engineers that are actually can support it and can hit by a bus and everything is fine. And all of those things are actually covered in our ladder. Just a couple of examples. So think about E3 as kind of an entry-level engineer. You're not just straight out of school, but you've been here for a year or two. And E4 is kind of like very full, kind of like independent engineer, but someone that still has a lot of room to grow. So we require here, like, as part of our culture, part of our requirement, part of how we want to do things is you write tests and you follow best practices and you write integration testing if you need to, as an entry-level kind of independent engineer. As a slightly stronger independent engineer, you enforce those best practices. And this is encoded in how you get your compensation, so people actually pay attention. another value is kind of like provide incremental value when you build stuff, or don't just over-optimize. That's part of startup one-on-one. Avoid premature optimization appears here. We expect every engineer, even the most junior one, to actually deploy code to production and debug production bugs with some help. And this is in the ladder. Same about slightly more experienced engineer. They need to be able to do this independently. Get Shit Done is interesting. It's about execution, about planning and estimation, and about technical communication. It covers, delivering incremental value, access to production, documentation. So we will at some point blog about this and share the entire ladder. But again, the interesting stuff is our culture is encoded inside here. Like, you are expected to write your first design document and solicit feedback if you are entry level. And you are required to ensure bus factors through writing playbooks for the software that you deploy. Last one is interesting, is cross-functional domain expertise, recruiting and mentoring. So recruiting and mentoring sounds kind of like usual. Cross-functional domain expertise, this is something that ties back to the fact that we have a lot of clinician and a lot of domain knowledge running around in Flatiron. And the Manifesto items covered here are more about how we function as a team. And I'm just going to give this example. So we accept every entry-level engineer to actually be able to discuss the domain language. So we understand the clinical or customer-facing implication of the features, to be able to actually talk and get guidance from product or from accounts or from clinical. And we accept a slightly more advanced engineer to actually be able to represent engineering in front of clinical or accounts or medical informatics. Putting recruiting and mentoring and onboarding as part of the stuff that we require from people is kind of tied to the fact that we are a high-growth startup. So if you're not contributing to onboarding new people, if you're not contributing to recruiting, your impact is limited. And it's, again, it's something that is encoded here. So, a couple of kind of like lessons, and we'll do the pizza thing. We did a deep retro after each performance cycle. We didn't get it fully right in the first review cycle. To example, we used this term, system ownership. I think it actually appeared in the original Rent the Runway ladder. And now everyone is incentivized to own systems, but this is not what we wanted them to do. We wanted them to actually, know multiple systems and not own something, and it's just their own incentive. The initial version focused or described career growth about the number of systems or number of services that you own, and this is actually also not what we wanted to do, because some people are assigned to projects and they are going deep and they are going to have an impact by just solving a very deep problem on a single system. So we fix that. And I think that the last thing that we need to fix in the ladder right now is part of the acquisition. We inherited a very complex and highly available with a very strict runtime, kind of like when the system is down, physicians are dead or cannot really treat patients, they switch to paper. And there, the entire discussion about adding features or testing is different, because there's much more friction to add something to this kind of system than we had. So, bottom line, ladder is a very big hammer. It's an amazing tool for keeping people accountable. It's an amazing tool for documenting your culture. But you need to be careful not to incentivize the wrong behaviors. As a performance standards, leaving document is okay, but if it's too much of a moving target, people don't know what to do. So, but people were kind enough to not bitch and moan about this at least. Build your ladder not too early, because if you build it early, you don't really know what you're doing. You still don't have an engineering culture to tie it to, but not too late, because at some point those behaviors that you want to prevent or incentivize against are going to be too much out there. Running perf process using ladders. Ladders proved to be an advocacy tool for managers, so it was never used against someone. It's not that, oh, you haven't checked this box here. No, it's kind of like managers say, oh, Dave, he's an introvert, and now I understand his contribution better, and I can actually advocate for getting him the raise that he wanted. And giving the feedback to people through this ladder was very effective. So key takeaways. I hope that you understand what is a career ladder now. You care more about career ladders and about the performance process in your team, whether you are managing the team or whether you are part of a team. You see the connection between formalizing engineering cultures and career ladders, and I truly hope that you care more about documenting and formalizing your engineering culture. So any question?
Wow, quick round of applause. Thank you. That was excellent. Good shameless plug. So first question is, if you have an engineer, do you help them choose between a management and a non-management career path, or do you tell them which one that they're best set to go on?
It's a hard question. I think we have a very high bar on people's skills, on people managers, and the self-selection is actually pretty good. We tell people this is a new role, so the growth from an IC engineer to a tech lead is kind of natural. You organize the work for multiple people, but the switch from a TL to a manager is, no, you are taking a kind of like a diversion. Your goal now is to empower other people, to coach other people, to hold them accountable on stuff. It's a different job.
What kind of structure do you provide for first-time managers? So, you know, not new to this, and I want to do it. I've decided that's important to my career path. Do you put things or tools or training in place to help them, or are these skills that are sort of innate and you've identified them and they just need time to refine them?
About half of our managers are first-time managers, so they did get the support here. We only just started, like 250 people is the time you actually have a learning and development function. So there is a management training course that is going to be rolled out like in the next quarter. So far it's more of a coaching thing. And we start this in a very kind of informal way. You know, a new manager starts with like 1 or 2 people, and we tell them, hey, treat Dave as as your report. But it's not formal. So we still have a one-on-one with me. But you start developing the relationship. Behave like you are his manager, and at some point I just ask, hey, should we just make it formal? And people say yes, and we've used this technique multiple times. I'm not sure it's scalable, but so far it works.
Start in front and work back. So, gentleman right here.
Okay, because I have a question. When it comes to like ladders, people tend to be a little bit competitive. For example, let's just say rather than helping out someone that you person, like I want to climb your ladders. How do you actually keep people from like you want people to be collaborative, but you still want them to be impactful? Like how do you prevent competition?
I'll repeat the question. So ladders are actually putting performance in front of people's faces, and they're becoming a bit competitive about this. I haven't had this haven't encountered someone who's a bad cultural player, but if I do, I will give them best practices and best guidance on what is the Cobra benefit. Okay? Basically, first of all, the cultural part of the ladder is all about mentoring other engineers and collaborating and giving feedback. But we do have our performance review is such that someone that is not giving feedback and is not playing fair, we know it immediately and they get dinged about it. There is a nice, interesting question about do we make the levels public or not? So there is the kind of like the Facebook approach, which is hidden, and there is the Google approach, which is public. There's a trade-off here. If you make them hidden, then the competition is slightly less apparent, but then it's harder for you to celebrate people actually achieving the next level. So we kept it hidden so far, and we are actually actively considering about changing this. I think for the reason of, I have some Flatiron employees here that are here about this the first time, but no, for the reason that I want to recognize people's efforts and people, that's worth a lot. I think that, a link in the wiki saying you're a best cultural player, here are your Cobra benefits, I think will make the message.
I think except for getting shit done, it's very important, like the best developers are creative people who have the guts to say, let's refactor this part of code, let's debug this kind of stuff. How do you measure those kind of things? And how do you know that a manager is actually qualified to judge it?
I'll repeat the question. So creativity and being kind of a contrarian are amazing aspects of developers. How we encourage this and measure this. So this ties more to the performance process than to the ladder itself. I'm not sure that the ladder has like something about creativity, our ladder right now, and it's a very interesting point. The performance process is actually to tie to the question of how we actually identify engineers that are contrarians, that are good creative people. Our performance process is relying on peer feedback, and it's really apparent in the peer feedback. People are saying, you know, your idea of this and that, or your demonstration of this and that really helped us. So the manager is heard, has a great part of the evaluation, but the peer reviews are there. There is a calibration committee looking at the peer reviews, so so far we haven't encountered any adverse reaction to that.
Right. So you mentioned that we should not look at building a ladder in the startup too early, but what about the processes? You know, you have the graph and you say you onboarded 5 people and 6 months later you had to take some time to get the coding style synchronized and all that. Would you do that differently if you had to do it again a bit earlier?
No, I would start writing the developer etiquette, like how we do code and formalizing and documenting culture earlier, because it's easier to do, and you can do, like ladder is really comprehensive. It's about all aspects of engineering, and people need to have like, it's like writing your value statement in your first year. I think it's premature. Your first half a year, people are, like, I'll give you an example about this in Flatiron. So we are all real believers in value statements. Everyone brought a couple of values from their previous day of work. It didn't mean anything to anyone because it wasn't based on kind of like shared experiences and in our context. A year and a half in, we did this kind of big effort of formalizing our values, and every one of them is kind of like click to people. Same thing here.
Go ahead.
The organization has a lot of ontologies and people from different disciplines. How do you make sure that these can communicate correctly? So do you have like a matrix organization that you actually work with multiple people?
So let me try to repeat the question. With all of those nurses and oncologists and medical informaticists, how we make sure that they are all working on the right program together? This is the question. So yes, they are assigned to a project. So engineers are working in teams which are not matrix right now in Flatiron, but the specialists are assigned to a sprint process. And how do we make sure that people can communicate? It's like the same question that they asked like the Starbucks CEO, how you make all of your baristas smile. So I hired them like that. So the same thing about engineers. Someone that we think that would not be able to talk across discipline is too introvert or too, introvert is not the right thing to say, too lack communication skills, not English, like, you know, you hear my English, then we don't hire them. Like, this is literally a common thing in the hiring committee to say, hey, you know, I don't see this person being able to communicate with employees, I don't see this person communicate well with accounts, maybe we should, definitely if it's a senior engineer, maybe we should pass.
All right, well, let's call it an evening. Thank you very much.